In the heart of the Cascade Mountains, what began as a routine morning patrol transformed into an extraordinary tale of compassion, courage, and an unlikely connection between four soldiers and a desperate mother bear. The events that unfolded over the next 72 hours would not only test the limits of human ingenuity, but also challenge everything we thought we knew about the bond between humans and wild animals. The story that captured hearts across the nation started on a misty autumn morning at Fort Lewis Military Base in Washington State. A team of 4 soldiers, led by Staff Sergeant Mike Roberts, embarked on what seemed like just another border patrol. Little did they know they would soon find themselves orchestrating one of the most remarkable wildlife rescues in military history, one that would involve a trapped mother bear, her hidden cubs, and a series of events that would leave even the most seasoned wildlife experts amazed. As the morning sun barely touched the towering pines, the patrol moved through the dense forest. Staff Sergeant Roberts led the way, his 15 years of experience guiding every step. Behind him, Corporal Sarah Chen and James Martinez scanned the surroundings, while Private Tom Wilson brought up the rear. The usual morning chorus of birds had fallen silent, replaced by something far more unusual. The first cry cut through the stillness like a knife. Deep and pained, it echoed through the trees, carrying a desperation that stopped the soldiers in their tracks. Each subsequent cry grew more intense, drawing them off their usual route and deeper into the forest where they would discover a scene that would change their lives forever. Through the morning mist, they found one of the largest brown bears they had ever encountered, trapped in a natural depression between 2 massive fallen trees. But this was just the beginning. What started as a simple rescue would soon reveal itself to be something far more complex, involving hidden cubs, approaching storms, and a race against time that would require military precision, innovative thinking, and an unprecedented level of trust between humans and one of nature's most formidable predators. The bear's eyes, usually fierce and wild, met theirs with an intelligence that seemed to transcend the natural barrier between species. As Sergeant Roberts observed the scene, his experienced gaze caught details that others might miss. The way the bear positioned itself, its unusual behavior, all pointed to something more than just a trapped animal. His suspicions would soon lead to a discovery that would make this rescue attempt even more crucial. The 4 soldiers exchanged knowing glances, understanding that their routine morning patrol had just become something extraordinary. None of their training had prepared them for what they were about to face, but something in the bear's eyes told them they couldn't walk away. As Sergeant Roberts reached for his radio to call for backup, none of them could have predicted how their actions over the next 3 days would not only save lives, but also challenge our understanding of the relationship between humans and wild animals. This is the story of how military training met animal instinct, how innovation faced natural obstacles, and how an unlikely partnership between soldiers and a bear family would create a legacy that continues to inspire to this day. As the events unfolded, they would prove that sometimes the most amazing displays of compassion and intelligence can come from the most unexpected situations. As the morning fog began to lift, Sergeant Roberts and his team carefully assessed their unprecedented situation. The trapped bear, they now realized, was wedged nearly 6 feet deep in a natural crevice, with 2 massive fallen pine trees crossed above her, further limiting her movement. The earth around the crevice showed signs of recent rainfall, suggesting the ground had given way beneath the bear's weight, creating a natural pit that had become her prison. The soldiers noticed deep claw marks etched into the fallen trees and surrounding soil, evidence of the bear's desperate attempts to free herself. The ground was torn up in a wide radius around the trap, and patches of fur clung to the rough bark, telling a story of a lengthy and exhausting struggle. By Sergeant Roberts' estimation, the bear had been trapped for at least 2 days, possibly 3. Corporal Chen, who had completed a wildlife first aid course the previous spring, pointed out signs of dehydration in the bear. The animal's breathing was labored, and despite its massive size, they could see its ribs beginning to show through its usually thick coat. Time was not on their side. "Look at the soil displacement," Corporal Martinez observed, his engineering background bringing a crucial perspective to their assessment. "The more she struggles, the more the dirt keeps falling in. She's not just trapped, she's slowly being buried." His words added a new urgency to their situation, making it clear that observation alone was no longer an option. The bear's behavior continued to puzzle the experienced soldiers. Despite their close proximity, she showed none of the typical aggressive responses they would expect from a trapped wild animal. Instead, her eyes followed their movements with an almost calculated awareness. When Sergeant Roberts took a step closer, she remained calm, only letting out a soft moan that seemed more pleading than threatening. Private Wilson, maintaining his position as lookout, noticed something else. "Sergeant, there are fresh tracks all around this area," he reported, pointing to several sets of prints in the soft soil. "But they're not just from our bear. There are smaller prints too." His discovery added another piece to the increasingly complex puzzle they were facing. Robert studied the tracks carefully, his years of experience in these woods quickly confirming his earlier suspicions. The prints told a story that made his heart sink. This wasn't just about saving one bear anymore. Somewhere nearby, probably hidden in the dense undergrowth, cubs were waiting for their mother to return. The situation demanded immediate action, but the risks were mounting. The unstable ground around the crevice meant they couldn't bring in heavy equipment without risking a further collapse. The approaching weather system they'd been briefed about that morning would bring heavy rains by nightfall, potentially flooding the crevice. And now, with the likelihood of cubs in the picture, they had to consider the possibility of the mother bear's behavior changing dramatically if she sensed her young were in danger. As if understanding their dilemma, the bear let out another cry softer than before, her eyes never leaving Sergeant Roberts. In his decade and a half of military service, Roberts had learned to trust his instincts, and everything about this situation was telling him something extraordinary was happening. This bear wasn't just showing unusual behavior, she was actively trying to communicate with them. The team huddled together, keeping one eye on their trapped companion while Roberts radioed for additional support. They would need wildlife experts, rescue equipment, and possibly medical support, but time was their biggest enemy. The weather, the bear's deteriorating condition, and the unseen cubs created a scenario where waiting for optimal conditions wasn't an option. As they began formulating a rescue plan, the bear watched them with what could only be described as hopeful anticipation. The morning sun now fully illuminated the scene, revealing the true precariousness of her situation. The soldiers could see that every movement caused more soil to trickle down into the crevice, slowly but surely making her prison smaller. None of them spoke it aloud, but each soldier felt the same thing. They were now responsible for not just one life but an entire bear family. Their routine patrol had evolved into a complex rescue mission that would require everything they'd learned in their military careers, and perhaps more importantly, would test their ability to trust their instincts about this extraordinary animal. That seemed to be placing her trust in them. The mid-morning sun did little to warm the increasingly tense atmosphere as Sergeant Roberts and his team faced their mounting challenges. Their initial radio call had brought disappointing news. The nearest wildlife rescue team was 4 hours away, delayed by a major highway accident. The approaching storm system was moving faster than predicted, with the first bands of dark clouds already gathering above the mountain peaks. The soldiers' basic patrol equipment seemed woefully inadequate for the task at hand. They had ropes, basic medical supplies, and their standard gear, but nothing designed for lifting a 1,000-pound bear from a deep crevice. Corporal Martinez emptied his pack, laying out everything they could possibly use. A handful of climbing, ropes, 2 emergency blankets, their canteens, and a basic toolkit seemed to mock the enormity of their task. "We've got 3, maybe 4 hours of daylight left before that storm hits," Chen calculated, watching the clouds rolling in with increasing speed. The wind had picked up, bringing with it the unmistakable smell of rain. The weather station's updated forecast crackled through their radio. Flash flood warnings, possible lightning. The situation was deteriorating faster than anyone had anticipated. The bear seemed to sense their urgency. Her cries had become softer, more frequent, as if conserving her remaining energy while still reminding them of her presence. The soil around the crevice was starting to shift more noticeably with each gust of wind. Small rivulets of dirt trickled down gradually deepening her earthen prison. Private Wilson returned from scouting the immediate area, his face etched with concern. "The cubs are definitely out there. I found fresh prints leading to a hollow about 50 yards east. But with this wind picking up, they won't stay sheltered for long." The knowledge added another layer of complexity to their already daunting task. Sergeant Roberts gathered his team for a strategy session, their heads bent together against the strengthening wind. Each passing minute felt like a luxury they couldn't afford. Martinez, drawing from his engineering background, sketched a rough rescue plan in the dirt with a stick. They would need to create some kind of pulley system, but the nearby trees were too far from the crevice to serve as anchor points. Their radio crackled again. Base Command informed them that a helicopter evacuation was impossible in the developing weather conditions. They were on their own, armed with nothing but their military training, basic equipment, and determination. The next message from command was even more sobering. The storm had intensified. They now had less than 2 hours before it would hit their location with full force. The team looked at each other, then at the bear, whose eyes seemed to reflect their own growing concern. They had faced challenging situations before, but nothing in their training had prepared them for this specific combination of circumstances: time, weather, limited resources, and the safety of both the bear family and themselves created a complex equation with no obvious solution. Thunder rumbled in the distance, causing the bear to stir anxiously in her trap. The first few leaves swirled past them, carried by increasingly strong wind gusts. The weather was closing in around them like a tightening noose. Whatever they were going to do, they needed to do it now. Sergeant Roberts made his decision. They couldn't wait for specialized help or better conditions. Breaking open their emergency packs, he began allocating tasks with military precision. Chen would monitor the bear's condition and the cub's location. Martinez would work on designing a makeshift pulley system using their available gear. Wilson would secure the perimeter, ensuring no curious wildlife wandered into their rescue zone. As his team moved into action, Roberts checked his watch. The digital display seemed to mock them with its relentless countdown toward darkness and storm. They had one chance to get this right. The margin for error was non-existent. If they failed, they would be responsible for not just the loss of the mother bear, but potentially her cubs as well. The first drops of rain began to fall, scattering across the forest floor like tiny harbingers of the challenge to come. The real test was about to begin, and the next hour would determine whether their unprecedented rescue mission would end in triumph or tragedy. Time seemed to blur as the rescue operation began in earnest. The first raindrops had turned into a steady drizzle, making the ground increasingly treacherous. Sergeant Roberts and his team worked with focused intensity, knowing each minute brought them closer to both success and potential disaster. Martinez's makeshift pulley system, crafted from their climbing ropes and equipment belts, looked almost primitive against the task it needed to perform. They had stripped their packs, uniforms, and gear of anything remotely useful. Even their bootlaces had been repurposed into the rescue apparatus. The first attempt nearly ended in catastrophe. As they lowered the rope harness toward the bear, a sudden gust of wind sent loose soil cascading into the crevice. The bear let out a distressed cry as the earth shifted around her, threatening to bury her even deeper. Chen quickly signaled for them to abort, her trained eye catching the warning signs of an imminent soil collapse. Their second try proved equally frustrating. The ropes, designed to support human weight, groaned ominously when they attempted to create a cradle strong enough to support the massive bear. The material stretched dangerously, forcing them to abandon the attempt before their limited equipment was damaged beyond repair. The bear's condition was deteriorating rapidly. Her breathing had become more labored, and her earlier alert eyes were showing signs of exhaustion. The rain, now coming down steadily, was turning the soil around her into a deadly mixture of mud and debris. Time was slipping away like the water, running down their faces. Private Wilson, who had been monitoring the perimeter, suddenly called out through the increasing wind, "Sergeant, the cubs are moving. They're trying to reach their mother." The situation was becoming critical. If the cubs entered the rescue zone, the mother's behavior could change instantly, turning their already dangerous mission into an impossible one. It was in this moment of near desperation that Corporal Martinez's eyes fell on Wilson's tactical vest. Unlike standard issue gear, these vests were designed to withstand extreme stress and distribute weight evenly. Originally meant to carry ammunition and equipment, they might just be strong enough to support a different kind of precious cargo. "Sergeant," Martinez shouted over the wind, "I have an idea." His hands were already moving, stripping the tactical vests from his teammates. With practiced efficiency, he began weaving the vests together, creating a makeshift sling that combined their strongest pieces of equipment. The reinforced material, designed for battlefield conditions, might just be sturdy enough to lift a bear. They worked feverishly, using every bit of their military training. Chen's knowledge of knots from her advanced survival training proved invaluable as they constructed their innovative rescue device. Roberts contributed his experience with weight distribution from years of loading transport vehicles. Even Wilson's background in obstacle course construction helped them angle the lift just right. The bear watched their efforts with what seemed like understanding, remaining surprisingly still as they lowered their improvised rescue sling. The rain had intensified, creating a curtain of water that made every movement treacherous. Thunder rolled overhead, but the bear didn't flinch. Instead, she seemed to be waiting, conserving her energy for what was to come. As they maneuvered, the sling into position, Martinez directed the operation with the precision of a battlefield engineer. Each soldier took their position, understanding that perfect coordination would be essential. They had one chance. The equipment wouldn't survive a second attempt, and the bear might not either. The next few moments would test everything they knew about teamwork, strength, and trust. As Roberts gave the signal to begin lifting, the bear did something remarkable. Instead of panicking, she shifted her weight slightly, helping them position the sling more securely. It was as if she understood. This was her last chance too. The rescue device creaked under the enormous strain as they began to lift. Every soldier's muscles burned with effort. The rain poured down relentlessly, making their grip on the ropes treacherous. But slowly, incredibly, their innovative solution began to work. Inch by inch, they started to raise the bear from her earthen prison. But just as success seemed within reach, a massive thunderclap shook the forest. The ground, already unstable, began to shift beneath their feet. The bear let out a distressed cry as their rescue device suddenly twisted in the wind. They were so close to success, yet one wrong move could spell disaster for everyone involved. The days following the dramatic rescue brought a series of remarkable events that none of the soldiers could have anticipated. The reunion between the mother bear and her cubs became a moment that would forever be etched in their memories. As the cubs bounded toward their mother, their small forms silhouetted against the clearing sky, even the most hardened soldiers felt their eyes well up with emotion. The local wildlife authorities arrived the morning after the rescue, expecting to find a routine animal incident. Instead, they discovered something unprecedented. The mother bear, rather than immediately retreating deep into the forest with her cubs, remained in the general vicinity of the rescue site. Wildlife experts were baffled by her behavior, especially when she appeared at the edge of the clearing each morning for the next week, her cubs tumbling playfully behind her. Dr. Sarah Thompson, the lead wildlife biologist called to document the case, found herself rewriting everything she thought she knew about bear behavior. "In 20 years of studying brown bears, I've never seen anything like this," she reported. "The level of trust this bear shows around these specific soldiers goes against everything we understand about wild bear behavior. She's maintaining a safe distance, but she's clearly choosing to stay near them." The story caught the attention of national media, but it was the scientific community that showed the most interest. Researchers from major universities arrived to study this unique case of human-animal interaction. The rescue technique developed by the soldiers using their tactical vests became the subject of several wildlife rescue training programs, proving that sometimes the most effective solutions come from thinking outside conventional methods. For the soldiers themselves, the impact of those 72 hours ran deeper than any military exercise had before. Corporal Chen, inspired by the experience, enrolled in advanced wildlife emergency response courses during her off-duty hours. Martinez found himself consulting with wildlife rescue organizations, helping them adapt military equipment for animal rescue operations. His innovative thinking during the crisis had opened up an entirely new approach to wildlife rescue technology. Private Wilson, who had been considering leaving the military after his current term, discovered a new sense of purpose. He began working with the base's environmental office, helping to develop protocols for wildlife encounters that emphasized compassion alongside safety. His first-hand experience with the bear family had shown him how military precision and environmental stewardship could work hand in hand. But it was Sergeant Roberts who perhaps underwent the most profound transformation. His leadership during the crisis earned him a commendation, but more importantly, it changed his entire approach to his military career. He began advocating for the integration of wildlife response training into standard military procedures, arguing that soldiers needed to be prepared for more than just combat situations. The bear family's story didn't end with the rescue. Over the next few months, local rangers reported regular sightings of the mother and her growing cubs. Unlike other bears in the area, this family showed no signs of aggression toward humans, while still maintaining a healthy wild distance. They became living proof that one act of compassion could fundamentally alter the relationship between humans and wildlife. The military base itself underwent changes following the incident. New protocols were established for wildlife encounters, and emergency rescue equipment was added to standard patrol gear. The location of the rescue became known informally among the soldiers as Bear's Hope, a reminder of the day when military training and animal instinct found common ground. As autumn turned to winter, the bear family prepared for hibernation, but their legacy continued to grow. The story of their rescue became part of the base's training materials, teaching new recruits that courage and compassion were as important as any tactical skill. Wildlife organizations around the country began studying the incident, learning from how 4 soldiers with limited resources managed to save not just one bear, but an entire family. For Roberts, Chen, Martinez, and Wilson, their regular patrols never felt quite the same. Each time they passed through that section of forest, they found themselves scanning the trees, remembering the days when they found themselves part of something larger than their military duties. They had gone into those woods as soldiers and emerged as something more guardians of life in all its forms. The aftermath of the bear rescue proved that sometimes the most important battles we fight aren't against enemies, but against our own limitations and preconceptions. In choosing to help a desperate mother bear, 4 soldiers hadn't just saved a life, they had helped bridge the gap between 2 worlds, leaving both forever changed. Spring arrived at Fort Lewis with an unexpected visitor. Just as the last patches of snow were melting, the mother bear and her now yearling cubs emerged from hibernation and made their way to a familiar clearing. The same clearing where, months before, 4 soldiers had risked everything to save her life. This time, however, she wasn't coming to seek help, she was coming to show them something remarkable. News of the bear family's return spread quickly through the base. When Sergeant Roberts and his team arrived at the location, they witnessed a scene that left even experienced wildlife experts speechless. The mother bear kept a respectful distance but clearly recognized her rescuers. She sat calmly at the forest's edge, watching as her cubs played nearby, their healthy conditions a testament to her survival and successful winter hibernation. What happened next became the talk of wildlife researchers across the country. Over the following weeks, the bear began leaving small gifts at the edge of the clearing: fresh fish, untouched honeycomb, and even fallen fruit. Dr. Thompson, who continued studying the case, documented this unprecedented behavior. "This isn't just unusual," she noted in her research paper. "This is the first documented case of a wild bear showing what appears to be deliberate gratitude toward humans." The cubs, now growing into strong young bears, seemed to inherit their mother's unique trust of the 4 specific soldiers. While maintaining their wild nature, they showed none of the fear or aggression typically associated with bears encountering humans. Instead, they demonstrated a remarkable ability to coexist peacefully, staying within their forest territory, but occasionally appearing when the rescue team patrolled the area. The story of the bear rescue transcended its original circumstances, becoming a symbol of something greater. Military bases across the country began incorporating wildlife response training into their programs, using the Fort Lewis incident as a case study in innovation and adaptability. The tactical vest rescue technique developed by Corporal Martinez was refined and adopted by wildlife rescue organizations worldwide. The bond between the soldiers and the bear family evolved into something that challenged scientific understanding. While remaining completely wild, the bears seemed to recognize the boundary between their world and human territory, creating a unique model of coexistence. Their behavior provided valuable data for wildlife researchers studying animal intelligence and interspecies relationships. Perhaps the most lasting impact was on the soldiers themselves. The team stayed together, their shared experience creating a connection that went beyond military camaraderie. They became advocates for wildlife conservation, their story inspiring a new generation of soldiers to see their role as protectors extending beyond human boundaries. As the years passed, the legend of the bear rescue grew. New recruits at Fort Lewis would hear the story during their training, learning that true strength often lies not in confrontation, but in compassion. The mother bear and her cubs became symbols of the unexpected ways military service could impact the natural world. The clearing where it all began was officially named Bear's Promise, marked by a simple plaque that told the story of 4 soldiers who chose to help when help seemed impossible. The mother bear continued to visit the area with her growing cubs, their presence a living testament to the extraordinary events that had unfolded there. In the end, what started as a desperate cry for help in the forest became something more, a reminder that the most powerful connections often come from the most unexpected situations. The legacy of those 72 hours continues to influence military training, wildlife rescue operations, and our understanding of the complex relationships possible between humans and wild animals. As Sergeant Roberts would later write in his base report, "We went into those woods expecting to save a bear. Instead, we discovered that when we open our hearts to help another living being, regardless of species, we all become something more than we were before. That's the real miracle of Bear's Promise."